Welcome back to 420 Chief. Today we've got a powerhouse guest in the house, a veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, a Bronze Star recipient, and he Googled this one for me, a theoretical strategist and creative mind behind Blunt Style Incorporated, the president of Blunt Style Incorporated, actually. Jeremy Poley isn't just making dope shirts and packaging, he's building culture, sparking conversations, and showing what it looks like when veterans turn pain into purpose. This is about much more than merch, joints. This is about breaking stigmas, telling our stories, and reminding the world that healing comes in many forms. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I want to dive right in. As always, I'm awkward at small talk, so let's jump right in and tell us a little bit about you.
All right. My name's Jeremy Poley, President and CEO of Blood Style Incorporated. I grew up in a small town in Missouri, south of St. Louis. Joined the Army not long after 9/11. I was actually a military police officer in the United States Army. I would say I was the world's okayest cop.
World's okayest.
Yeah, world's okayest cop. Like I was pretty good at it, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. It was just that's what I wound up with. Um, I went to basic training for Leonardwood, Missouri, and then my first duty station, because it was only 2002, was in Panmunjom, South Korea, the Joint Security Area,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
also known as United Nations Security Battalion Joint Security Area. It's where they do the tours for the border, where they have the blue buildings,
Yeah,
with North Korea. Like that was my first duty station.
right on. I was actually south in Busan and Chinhae area for like 7, 8 years.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
so that was my first year in the Army, and then I left there, and then I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, where I spent the next 9 years and did 4 deployments, 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan. And then I left there and I went back to Korea, and I was actually stationed in Seoul at Yongsan
Yeah.
for another 1 year tour. And then I got stationed at Joint Airport in Washington, where I did one more deployment to Cuba. That Cuba deployment, my body had just, it was tired. My brain was tired, and it was time for me to move on. And so I took a medical separation with back surgery, actually just about 10 years ago to the day.
Wow. That's crazy. You were kinda all over the place, it sounds like.
Yeah, 7 overseas tours and, a 13-year career for the Army is a lot.
My goodness.
Yeah, nobody really, even, sergeant majors and stuff, a lot of them didn't have the time that I had.
Right. That's true, and something else that we talked about a little bit before the show was the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star as a sergeant, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my third deployment, December 15, 2007, I got hit by an EFP, an explosively formed penetrator, outside of Kirkuk, Iraq, in the northeast. Um, Hang on, just give me a second there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so everybody in my truck got hurt. Nobody died, thankfully. It was very, very much blessing. We all took shrapnel. I'd say I took shrapnel in my face, my arm, my leg. The armor saved my life. I pulled a 2-inch piece of shrapnel out of my tactical vest. It was like right here, like literally stuck in the ceramic. I
Wow.
keep it around as a good luck charm. I didn't bring it for show and tell though.
Right.
But so it was December 15, 2007, and by January 2008, I was recuperating at Bamsey Brook Army Medical Center down in San Antonio. So I did about 5 months there, and then I actually went back to Fort Riley and met up with my unit when they returned from their deployment. So they had a 15-month deployment. And I left after a year.
Wow. Yeah, you
Yeah.
spent quite a bit in total. How much
Yeah.
time did you spend overseas, would you say?
Overseas, like combat zone, or overseas, like
Away from home?
away from home. Oh, 6.5 years, maybe like 6.75 years. I'd have to do the math, but yeah,
It's a
everything.
it's a it's a lot, man. I know just being in the Navy, we would do, deployments when I was on the ship. I did 1 ship deployment, and I was like, "I'm never doing this again," so I went to the Security Forces Brownwater Navy where we did mobilizations instead,
Yeah,
and I like that because it felt more controlled. Because when underway, you never know how long you're gonna be gone, and like you had mentioned, they were out there for 15 months. That's a long one, you know?
it is. And then 2010, I was in Afghanistan, where I wasn't in one set location, and I spent my time flying around at night and doing missions at night. I'm not going to really go into it a lot, but it's definitely not. It was outside the normal parameters of warfare, I would say. Maybe asymmetrical. you
So
know,
what year was it that you got out of the Army?
I got out in October of 2015.
2015, and let's talk a little bit about your transition from, um, combat veteran, Purple Heart, Bronze Star to back into that civilian life.
All right. Well, when I got out in October 2015, so this kind of ties in. I had three things going on in my life. The first was I had just had back surgery, right? Second one is I was losing my career, right? It's 13 and a half years. I was trying to go for 20.
Yeah.
And, the third thing was, is I was in the middle of a divorce with, child custody stuff, right? So it was like all these things, at that. And then, from October until January, the beginning of January, I basically took time off. I like sat down and I came up with this idea. It's called a PACE plan, which PACE in the Army is an acronym for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And so what I did was is I took those for means of communication and divided it up into, what am I going to do with my life? What's my primary goal, right? Like, if I can get out of the Army and get a high paying job, and like just go right into work, like that's great. That's what I'm going to do. And then my alternate was, I'll go to college, use my 9/11 GI Bill, get an education. Contingency was like, I'll go work at like Home Depot or something, right? And then my emergency was like, there's a Taco Bell 2 blocks from my house, and I will go work there if I need the money, right? Like, I'm not stressing, because when I got out, even though I'm a Purple Heart recipient and I did, 4 combat tours plus a tour in Cuba, which still kind of counted, I guess, but not really. I was rated 70% by the VA. So I did
70%
seventy
after
percent.
all that?
That's what I started. Yeah, and it's not like I didn't have all the problems, but maybe I just didn't word my things right.
I That's probably the most common theme that I've learned from talking with veterans, and that's
Yeah,
why I love having these conversations with real life people like yourself because it really resonates with people. Just from
yeah,
our conversation today, as you were getting out, you're having back surgery, you're going through a divorce. It's that reminder that shit happens and when it rains, it pours.
oh
And
yeah,
so many of us, have been there in that state of mind, and a lot of us don't make it past it, and become a part of that 22 a day statistic. And so I love talking with people like yourself that have overcome so much, and it all at once,
yeah.
and then the VA to just, this we're talking about a Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star, and you start off at 70% from the VA. It's like you've been blown up. Like, come on.
I still have shrapnel in my body, and I still deal with the repercussions of it today. Uh, and it was during that span, those couple months, that I got back into weed, or cannabis medicine, whatever you want to call it. In the state of Washington, you won't, like, I may not refer to it as medicine a lot, although it is, because we're not allowed to use terms like healing or medicine or whatever, because it's, we don't, I don't know, Washington state just has weird laws like that. So
So
just
does
know,
TikTok.
if I say weed or joints or blunts, I really mean medicine.
So when you started it back again, the cannabis, let's talk about that. You said started up. When did you first get into cannabis and try it out in your life?
All right. Honestly, the first time I tried it out, I was 16 and a half, roughly. I know, because I was working at my first job. I actually worked at a psychiatric hospital in the kitchen. And then, during that time, my coworkers took me out on a lunch break, and we started, we went and got high and came back and went to work. And then that just, it became a thing. It wasn't like every day. And, I was young. I just thought it was cool, you
Right,
know? And it was very much like more attractive than drinking, and it wasn't a gateway drug that led me into 100 million other things, right? Alcohol is
right.
really, but so then I smoked, whenever it was available, because in Missouri in the 90s, you were getting dirt weed or better dirt weed.
Unless you knew my dad. Yep, that's true.
And I didn't know your dad, but but what you call it. So I put it down. After high school, I went off. Tried college out, wasn't very successful at it. Worked for a little while, and then 9/11 happened, and I was like, and I stopped then. And then I took pretty much a 13 and a half year tolerance break, except for the Willie Nelson concert that I went to.
Love it.
Yeah, you can't go to Willie and not, you know, partake in the things that go on during that time.
That's right.
But that was also after OF1, where I knew I was going back to Iraq, and there's a whole stage that most people went through in between those tours where it was like, I'm gonna live as hard as I can, and then I'm gonna have to go back, and that was very much a cycle for a lot of people. And I just want to say hi to everybody popping up in the comments thing. I appreciate you. So
So you put it down for, you had your tea break while you were in service, with the exception of a Willie concert. But then you said that then you picked it back up. And
yeah,
can you talk to us about what caused you to pick it back up?
yeah. So during my time in the army, there's a little backstory there. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll talk forever.
Talk about
But
what you want. This is
all
your
right.
story.
Yeah, so after, my 2005 tour, even though I got hurt in 2007, 2005 was probably the most mentally tolling tour that I had, just because of the amount of, like, I worked security for explosive ordnance disposal for most of the deployment, and every IED, whether it was not an IED, like just some trash, whether it was an IED and it didn't blow up, whether it was an IED and it blew up and nobody got hurt, or nobody got, anything else, or it was an IED and people got hurt, or IED and people got, decimated, right? Like I mean, just terrible, terrible, like every day, like 8 to 10 missions just out. Like it was crazy. So I started using, I started going to see mental health counselors. Now I'm going to talk about mental health for a little bit, and like psychiatry and psychology, just because I think that helped me in my journey because I believed in it.
That's huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And, part of being in the military is, you also have to believe in the pills that they give you, right? So, I saw most antidepressants you can think of. I tried out, all sorts of other things. And that escalated over the years from like antidepressants and anti-anxieties and stuff. And then in 2007, I got hurt. And so right away I was on like 10 medications, right? All the things. And so, that started a regimen that lasted a couple years. And those couple years were really bad. The pills were like messing with my digestive system, all those other things. Like, yeah, it was rough. Like, I had to worry about shitting myself basically every day. And then as the pills compounded, it was like, oh, so now we have all these things. Oh, now you have high blood pressure. So let's give you high blood pressure medicine,
More
right?
pills.
Yep. And then, oh, your cholesterol is going up. So let's give you this, right? And they're like, oh, this one ain't working. Well, let's try this, And so that went on until I went to Afghanistan in 2010. And by the time I got in Afghanistan, like I was on like Adderall, migraine medicine called Fioricet, has like barbiturates in it, which we call all the antidepressants still, blood pressure, all that stuff. And then I was in Afghanistan, and I was very remote. No matter where I was at, it wasn't as easy to keep up with the things that you're used to taking care of on a regular basis. And so while I was in Afghanistan, I actually stopped taking all of it. I
Wow.
still
Cold
continued,
turkey on all of it?
yeah, except for, like Ambien. Oh yeah, also Ambien on those, but I was working nights, and then I would have trouble sleeping during the day when they were shooting artillery fire all the fucking time. So, it was very different. Pardon my language. Well, we can cuss and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a
All right.
sailor. I'm a chief, retired Navy chief, by the way.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I
Depends
say
on it,
fucking things.
but I'm not gonna be doing a lot. So after that, right, like the health problems continued. I started having back pain, and so I was put on medications all the way from like the usual stuff, the baclofen or the Flexerol, and then up through up until the point where they could be like gabapentin, and then all the other problems started back up again. My cholesterol went back up, all the other things, right? And so that went on, and then it turned out, like my thyroid didn't work. And so, I have a hypothyroidism. So I'm taking Synthroid and all that. And then right before I had surgery for about a whole year, I was actually on opiates, like morphine pills twice a day, Oxycontin, basically whenever I needed it for a whole year. And then I had surgery, pain went away, and then I didn't need any of the drugs, right? It was kind of amazing. Like, you know, I don't know what kind of level of pain people know about or, learn from, but the amount of pain that you're in, like it to all of a sudden be gone, It was like life changing, right? And
And
so,
that's huge. Most of our followers and even the folks here in the chat are veterans, and from who I know in here, all suffer from pain in different areas for different reasons. So
they
that's
know.
again the reason that I love having these interviews and talking to people like yourself is because it resonates with other people.
Yeah,
Here's what you've been through. Here's what the VA gave you. Here's what our government does. They give us this, and then they give us this, and take this. That's what they did with me. That's what they've done with so many others, and that's the problem.
yeah,
68% of us are prescribed these medications that increase the likelihood of us ending our lives, and
yeah.
that is a global crisis, and then they combat it with more and more and more pills and pills and pills and pills. So, when you went back over there, you said you quit everything. Let's talk a little bit about that and how you did that because it still hurts. It's a mental game. Can you kinda help us talk us through how you handled that?
Um, it. I mean, I can't say I handled it, like it was easy. You know what I mean?
It's
So,
never easy.
I was over there, and I mean, shit. I already had the Purple Heart. I was in Afghanistan, my fourth tour. But in Afghanistan, which was the only time I went there, and it was my last like real combat tour. Everything was different. For 3 years in Iraq, I drove around on the roads. I like to refer it as to like the duck game at the carnival. Like you're just going around in circles waiting for you to get pinged, right? So eventually it's it felt like really it was going to be when, not if, that, something was going to happen. I mean, it's like I spent over 1,200 days in combat zone. So it's there's every day there's that risk, and so when I was in Afghanistan, I wasn't driving on the roads. I wasn't out doing like training local police forces or pulling security or doing convoys like I had done all the other tours. I was flying around at night. I didn't get in a vehicle once and drive around the roads of Afghanistan. I just flew around places. Like it was pretty neat, definitely a different lifestyle than, what I was accustomed to. And so that was kind of the difference for me. And then also when I talked about the artillery fire during the day while I'm trying to sleep, I just, they were shooting from probably 300 meters from where I lived, right? And and this would go on, barrages almost every day, shooting wherever they're shooting, and I'm trying to sleep. And then I actually learned how to not wake up while those were going on. Uh, I mean, when I quit taking them all, I went through side effects like crazy. It was pretty terrible most of the time. Uh, it wasn't like it was easy. But I think one of the big steps was there are two things. One in my mind, I was like, look, if I can do this while I'm over here and like get off these things, there's probably no better environment than the environment that caused it all, right? And it wasn't like I was instantly cured. It's not like I went through all the bad things and then went through the withdrawals from the chemicals. And I don't mean withdrawals like heroin withdrawals, but when you quit taking medicines, it fucks with your body. And so, hang on, I got lost there for a second. That's the power blunt style. I got smoked.
That's fine. No, you're talking about how, you it takes a toll on your body still, and it's not easy. It's a daily practice, just like with anything else, just like with going to the gym, it's a daily practice, and
Yep.
it takes a toll. Really, it can take a toll on your mental health, so it's important to do things to keep that in check, like whether that's going to the gym or finding, um, healthy hobbies is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
And take control of that and work through it, and remember that pain is temporary. That's kinda what I think HOPE stands for, hold on, pain ends.
Yeah.
Remembering this is all temporary.
Yep. So, but then I still continue to do counseling, like, and that was sort of a thing. Is I continue to do counseling for most of the rest of my career. Getting out and talking deep feelings and going through ways, because part of my time getting hurt, I think, is it was just after they started doing like treatments for TBI, and we took how do we put it? So I think not only experimentation and medication, but experimentation and like psychology and psychiatry techniques or whatever, right? So I found the one thing I can't say was like a shotgun blast, and I got to find a few things that actually work. And I've used it intermittently throughout the years after, getting out of the army and starting back up with cannabis, which I'll get to, after this. But I think continuing that, it was awesome, but then it was also a blow after, Afghanistan, where I was like, well, shit, I did all this work, and then now I'm starting to have the back pain, and then now I have to do the same thing over again. And so I was relieved when I didn't have to do any of that anymore, or I had an alternative source of medicine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and a safer one at that, for sure.
So, all right. So that's the backstory. So now I get out of the army and I have all this stuff going on. Obviously, I'm stressed. I even quit smoking. Like, I'm sorry, guys, I smoke cigarettes, but
I
I
did
quit smoking.
I quit smoking cigarettes this year, February 11th,
Oh,
using
congrats.
I did, I tried I wanted to, I have to lead by change, and I was like, "I've quit drinking, I've quit all these other things, why am I still smoking? Like, why is this like, lingering? Why did this last longer than alcohol? And why
Yeah.
is it so damn hard to quit?" So I actually used my vape, every time I would have, like an urge, I would use, vape high in CBD, not to get to feel anything, but help with that oral fixation, and it really did help. And then after about 3 weeks, I was able to I don't vape very often because I feel like it gives me a cold if I do it
Uh,
for too long. So I
yeah.
was able to just stop that altogether and get back down. Like, I didn't wanna overdo that either, trade one for the other, but it was so much easier to stop vaping.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but yeah. So
Oh
you were
no, it's
yeah, you talking about smoking.
yeah. But I lost where I was at right before that. Oh, so no, I quit smoking cigarettes when I had the back surgery. So I was like, at about 30 days where I was the most, because I don't really drink either, where I was just the most sober I think I'd ever been since I was a teenager. you know and it was pretty wild. But in those 30 days I realized I needed something. I really did embrace believing in the psychology side of it, the talking and learning methods of dealing with things. They teach you like all the things you can use, deep breathing. There's one called biofeedback, where if you concentrate and think about it hard enough, you can raise the body temperature of parts of your body, and it's like a meditative state. That's really big. Exercise, healthy food, all those things, really, really became important. But what I realized was that, you know, I lived in a state where weed was legal. I could just go to the store. And so I did. And the first time I smoked it, I got all paranoid. I closed all the blinds in my apartment, and I like cleaned everything up, and I like got rid of the evidence. And then, about a week later, I was like, oh man, that's so silly. And so I went back to the store and I talked with the people there, and they were really knowledgeable. And there was so much like science behind it and terms I'd never even heard of. And I was kind of enamored, and I was like, oh, and they were like, do you want to pick out your own buds? And I was like, no, you guys go ahead. Like, you know what you're doing. And so that's what started it. So, it doesn't smoke much, a couple pipe rips here and there, just kind of, but it helped too when, you know, like I had done all the things that I could, but I still needed something extra to help me maintain some sort of, level. And it does way more for every symptom that I had from my time in the military than 10 pills combined. I just had back surgery, and I didn't, I was doing physical therapy and stuff. And it was, those 30 days were rough. And then, I found like they have creams, and I'd put a muscle cream on, and it would be much better than putting like icy hot on. Right. And then same thing, I smoke joints, so I'd smoke a little pipe here and there. And that would make me, feel better and relaxed. And I'd go walk, and I'd go hiking. I did a lot of walking. Like I'd go to, so there's a golf course around Joint Base Lewis McChord called, well, shit, I don't remember the name, but it hosted the U.S. Open like 6 or 7 years ago. So it's prestigious golf course, but there's this little over 3 mile track that goes up and down hills and around the whole park area that they have down by the Puget Sound area, which is beautiful. Beautiful sunsets, all that stuff. They have a little dog park, and I have a border collie blue heeler mix puppy.
Aw.
So, well, he's 10 now, but I got him right after I had back surgery. That was part of my healing journey too. Dogs are fucking awesome.
Well, I love that you mentioned that it made you, inclined to go take the hikes, because one of the stigmas around cannabis usage is that it couch locks you and you don't have energy to go do anything, like take hikes. Um, and that's not the case. It helps me cope, like overcome the pain in my knees and my lower back and my hips to hit the trails with my border collie and my mutt Spike. And not only that, but when the dogs stop to sniff around, I stop and I look around and I listen, and I'm not scanning for snipers and shit like that. I'm looking at the flowers, smelling the pollen and whatever in the air, and I'm not focused on the pain. I'm not hyper focused on my surroundings. I'm taking in just nature's beauty and the time with my dogs. That in itself is a complete mental adjustment, and completely not true when people say that you just get couch locked. Not only does it help me get out, it doesn't give you motivation. Nothing does except for action. You take action to get motivation, but once you're out there and you know what, I can handle this amount of pain because nothing's going to kill it always. If you're living in it, you just have to make good decisions. But anyways, it helps you get out there and it helps with the pain, but then it helps you take it in and really be present in your time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Being present in the moment, it's one of those. It's a meme or whatever, right? It's a motivational poster, and it really does. It helps drown out the noise, is what I like to say. There's a lot of noise that goes on. Like my title, theoretical strategist, right? It's kind of a joke, but all the time I'm thinking about possible worlds, or as they call it, the multiverse, right? Like what would happen, like I'm looking at something and I think of like 10 different scenarios that could happen in that moment, right? Like you're driving on the highway, see a car kind of driving, you look around and you're like, oh shit, I could see 10 different ways this could go. I
I
think,
felt that last night, brother. I was driving back from Sunny's house in Connecticut, 1,100 miles from her driveway to mine, and on the way back, I felt that, like, I could see every scenario of, like, if this, then this could happen, and then I felt like I was the one, like, it's all these multiverses, I'm the one that's gonna make it this. But, yeah,
yeah,
it's like there's all these possible scenario and outcomes of what could potentially happen everywhere.
yeah. And, it's like, it's okay to do that. But, if you do it all day, it wears you out. And, it kind of helps quiet out that noise stuff. And, uh, you know, getting out there in the world and being in the moment, like, I have built some habits out of, my connection with cannabis from before I was in the army to returning it now, after the army. I know that part of my journey is, after I got out of the army, I started smoking weed, did better in college than I did in high school, did better in college than I did my first time. The Army's probably to thank for some of that, but what really helped me focus and drown out the noise, studying philosophy, which is, it's not easy, and it's pretty much a worthless degree unless, you have a reason for it. And my reason was because I think I still needed that extra help. Like there was all the things that I could have had going on, and that helped me the most. But to drown out that noise and be experience that, and then around my school time, I started to think about, well, what can I do? Because I learned about something called the Ship of Theseus, right? Have you
Tell us
heard of?
about that.
All right. Well, it's like I can't. I don't. You can't.
Rephrase it.
But I'll give you the general runaround, right? So, Ship of Theseus is about a boat named after Theseus, the Greek warrior. I think he slayed the Minotaur, did some other adventures around ancient Greece stories, right? And so, uh, in his honor, they build a ship. And every year, this ship sails out, goes on a journey, and comes back. But, Greek boats are made of wood and parts got to be replaced. So eventually, it's like the cells in your body. Eventually, all the parts get replaced. And then you wonder if, is it still the ship of Theseus if it doesn't contain any original parts, right? Because there's only one boat, built in his honor. And so this was like, I think that was Plato. I'm pretty sure it was Plato was the thing first popped up. So it's a really old like identity paradox, right? So are you still the same person if you change out all your parts? And then while I was doing my studies, I found out there's a guy named John Locke, 16th or 17th century philosopher. He came up with the idea that instead of just ship A, the original boat, and ship B, the boat that's made with all the replacement parts, but both known as the ship of Theseus, that there would be a third boat. And the third boat would be built from all the old pieces that ship A threw out, right? So you have the original boat, the replacement boat, and then the boat built from the original boat. Now it's all kind of crazy, and you can kind of look at that as there's infinite boats, right? Because that's how I look at it. And I haven't solved anything. I'm not a philosophical genius, right? You can't really solve a paradox. But what I did was, is I remembered ship A is like me, like Jeremy, before I joined the army. And ship B is, all the shit that was replaced in order to make Army Jeremy. Because, pre war Jeremy and after war Jeremy, we're a little different, right? I mean, a lot, honestly. But then I was like, man, what did I enjoy from that first time around that I'd like to maintain no matter what, right? There's ways to figure that stuff out, or even just keep around. And so one of the things was concerts. So when I got out of the army, there's well, I don't know, I'm kind of going off on a long story here, but one of the first things that I remember was like, oh, I really like going to concerts when I was younger. I'd go to the grocery store because this is the 1900s, and I'd go to the grocery store in the little customer service area, and they'd have a Ticketmaster thing there, and I'd go to concerts. And I like baseball games, I like sports. And there was about a 10-year period of my life, basically from 2005 to 2015, where I didn't do any of that because I didn't want to go in public places, right? Didn't want to be around crowds.
Yeah, isolated.
Yep, I kind of isolated. And then, uh, I mean, I did other stuff, like I'd go fishing and all that, but definitely, those are things you can do by yourself, right? Or with just a buddy or two. But going somewhere where there's 20,000 people, it's like being back in a city somewhere, and you think about stuff that's happened and stuff that could happen, at the time, and you're like, possible worlds, right?
Yeah.
So I found vettix.org, which everybody I think knows. If you don't know about vettix.org, you should check it out. But if you're in the state of Washington, please don't, because I like my chances of winning tickets.
Ah, ha, ha.
So for since 2016 until now, I've probably been to over 100 sporting events, concerts, uh, other things like that. And they're also one of the veterans charities that my company gives back to, with the 10% of the profits that we give back to, things to help out veterans' mental health.
That's an amazing segue, actually. And VetTix is a great organization, and they do have tickets to a lot of games, concerts, even really amazing shows. But you mentioned that your company gives back 10% to VetTix. Let's talk a little bit about what your company is. Blunt Style Incorporated. Um, Talk to us about the conception of that, the products that you have, to start. We'll just start there.
Okay. Well, Blunt Style. So Blunt Style's actual motto is "It's a pipe dream." Right. That's what's federally trademarked.
This is
Blunt
see,
pipe dream.
I gotta call it out to everybody to catch on. Jeremy has, like, he's funny, man, he's clever. Like, his Purple Heart license plate says, "It hurts," or "It hurt." And then, the pipe dream, and then we gotta talk about some of your strain names, like your Canagars.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Let's
Yeah,
talk
I
about
brought
some of that.
brought a couple examples of the stuff, but so after I got my degree in philosophy, I graduated in 2020, right as COVID started. I was doing online classes through Arizona State. I was like, well, what does somebody with a philosophy degree do, right? And by that time, I was 100% right. So, I was like, well, the people with philosophy degrees either work at Starbucks or around here a weed store. And so I went and sat down and became a security guard at just a weed store 15 minutes away from my house, because
Is
I
that
was
like
like,
a
oh man,
dispensary there?
yeah, dispensary, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, dispensaries, I'm sorry. Yeah. But I worked there for a little over 2 years, and I was kind of like, I had started as a door guy, moved my way up to management fairly rapidly, just given my experience, maturity level, and the odd incident where I actually stopped somebody from robbing the store, so
That'll
not
do it,
a bunch.
when you
They try.
take action like that, a lot of people would panic and freak out, and it's like they definitely had the right guy for the job. Can you tell us about that incident just briefly?
Oh yeah, so I'll try to keep it short, but it was 2020 COVID times. you know, I've been there about 2 months, and the way they had the store set up before they changed it for COVID was that, like you could easily reach and grab the bag and run before they're done with the transaction, right? And so I was actually looking at the exit door because there are some customers coming in. Customer service, you say hi, check their ID card, right? And I heard somebody yell my name, like, Poley, stop that guy. And so I turned around and I saw a guy running, and I just stuck my arm out and just put him in a bear hug. And then
Got him.
I held him in that bear hug until the police arrived. It was probably like 5 minutes, and maybe less. I don't know. Passage of time is different when your adrenaline's pumping. But like five fully decked out police cars roll up in the parking lot, like ready to go. It turns out, I mean, he was obviously somebody who was having a rough time. I'm pretty sure he was without housing. I mean, young kid. Really small. So it's not like, I mean, I'm a big dude, but it's not like I was wrestling a big dude. And once I grabbed a hold of him, he wasn't like trying to fight me. He wasn't trying to headbutt me. It wasn't
Yeah,
like,
he found out.
yeah, it was kind of crazy because like there's like the rule is that you're not supposed to get hands on at all. And my problem is that somebody called my name and said stop him, and the training just kicked in.
Right.
And so it wasn't like anything else. So I just, the guy subdued and stopped right away, so I didn't have to do anything else. So basically, I bear hugged the guy till the cops showed up, and that was within like this gray area where you're not supposed to go hands on, but also you did, and nothing happened. So, but the guy was only trying to steal like $50 worth of weed. But right after that, and also, I talk to people. I'm a pretty talkative guy, in case you guys can't tell. you know but it's what my personality too is. I showed up every day on time, and a lot of times in the industry that's more than what you get from
True.
a lot of people. It's a very easy industry to be in. So after about 2 years, I was like, I want to see what else I can do. I actually got really high one day, and I'd been thinking about it for a while, and actually talking to some of the customers at the store about my idea. And it was just happenstance that one of them looked up like bluntstyle.com, right? And nobody owned it. And I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. I think somebody owns bluntstyle.com, but it was for sale. And I was like, well, I don't have that kind of money. And so I was like, what can I do? So I, looked around, Googled it. Google is a good friend when you're trying to find stuff out, but looked around and saw that, somebody had tried to do it, but it didn't work out for them. And I was like, well, obviously the inspiration comes from grunt style. And we'll get that out of the way. At the time, when I started the company 3 years ago, grunt style wasn't really into, I mean, they are into, that space. They are into alternative healing modalities, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm actually going to one, this next weekend, Integrations in Troy, Missouri. I did interview Will Wisner from Grunt Style Foundation, so,
yeah,
yeah, they're definitely a lot more vocal lately for sure this past year
yeah,
in cannabis and other healing modalities.
yeah. Whatchamacallit. So I started, and I reached out on social media. I don't know. It took him like 3 weeks to get back to me because I didn't, talk with anybody else. I just sent it to their like social media, I think Facebook page or Instagram page. Just said, hey, I'm going to start this company called Blunt Style. I love what you guys do. Grunt Style is great. They do a lot of things for veterans, but obviously I mentioned I'm a Purple Heart recipient, and I was
I think your internet's cutting out,
like, hey,
Jeremy.
that's cool. Yeah.
There, you're back.
Okay.
So you got
So
Blunt Style, you got it started, and then let's talk about, like, what your mission when you started it off.
the mission right away was to, just create something that was kind of funny and humorous, help reach out and advocate for all these, ages and experience. Know that like it's okay to try something else, and that's something else that's medicine, and that medicine works for a lot of people. Working in the weed stores, there are a lot of veterans that come in and buy weed, and a lot of them, would do something. This is kind of off subject, but maybe within the realm of things that veterans with, these things discuss is how having a medical marijuana card interferes with your ability to have a concealed carry permit. So that scared a lot of veterans, that scares a lot of veterans from, trying it out, right? Because it's a drug. And if you get caught with a drug and a gun, you lose your guns, and you don't want to lose your guns, which, veterans love their guns. Like, it's,
Amen.
yeah, and I'm not saying anything about anything on that. Just, I mean, if I think for the most part, a majority of veterans enjoyed being able to go out and use firearms and have a good time.
A little range therapy.
Yeah.
It's, oh, yeah, definitely.
All right. But anyhow, but also, I had customers that come in and be like, "Hey, man, like, my back's hurting. What kind of strains do you have that you can use?" Or, "Oh man, I've been, really freaking out lately. My anxiety's up. Like, what kind of strain you got that's going to help out?" Or, whatever. And it's not like, I'm not a medicine man or anything, but, if you do some research and you get knowledge, yep, there you go. Yeah. So
Little
if you
book
do
I wrote.
research knowledge, which is, yeah, that, and then you help out other people, they really appreciate that. And then, like being able to help other people, like working in the cannabis world, not only is helping out veterans, but cancer patients. Cancer patients use these products all the time to overcome, the symptoms and stuff from chemotherapy to help them eat. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there in the world. You can Google it and like
Yeah,
pretty much
there's been
from,
a lot of research done. There's been
yeah,
so much done, in fact, that they've turned it over to Congress, and Congress is aware of it, and they're pushing this through now for veterans at a federal level.
yeah,
But there's still a lot of education, for doctors for the endocannabinoid system that needs to be done. However, I don't feel like the answer is more and more and more research. I feel like there's been a significant amount of research and now, stories like yours, like mine, and like so many others on this podcast that just prove that it's not we don't need to continue researching it. We need to support it and make a change because every day that we don't, we're still doing it the old way that is contributing to the 22 a day. We're still prescribing out, you know, death essentially.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm thank you for that, but yeah, back on track. So you've got your let's talk about all the products that you have.
All right. So, Blood Style is originally, clothing store, right? We have an online store. I do a lot of the drop shipping, print, that printed at another place just because, I live in an apartment. I can't have a printing press. I don't have, my own building, but I have contracted with one local company. It's called, I'll give them a plug anyhow. I don't care. Pork Chop Seattle. It's a veteran-owned company. They have two shops, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, and they've helped me out. And then also my packaging company, Happy Head, they've helped me out too with some shirts. But the designs and stuff, I started messing around with Adobe Illustrator, and I wouldn't call myself I'm not an expert. I'm like a rough draft level artist. But my rough draft out there, and what I learned about the way things work is that I'm fully capable of doing this stuff, but I did it all on my own. So I mean, except for the design of the packaging right here, where I had some help from my business partner, who I'll talk about. That's who I'm partnered with in the state of Washington for the weed company. Uh, so I have shirts online, sweatshirts, hats, golf balls, because you can add that silly shit on like, drop shipping things, coffee, just because I wanted to be funny. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, I like Black Rifle coffee, but why not get some blunt style? You can wake and bake, blunt style.
Well, that's catchy.
Yeah,
It's
it was
got a
actually
ring.
that was one of my first T-shirts designs. So, and part of it's to be like funny too because, weed it helps bring out things in your brain that alcohol doesn't because it's not a depressant.
It
You know,
opens up creativity, and a lot of folks actually they'll use it for creativity.
yeah,
I do music lives on TikTok every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, 7 to 9 PM Central, and I've got folks in there that will quilt. I've got folks in there that write books. I've got folks in there that do all kinds of different. activities. Dustin cuts geodes, but they consume and it helps open up that creativity and that focus on things like that.
Oh yeah, no, actually, uh, I wrote uh, a god awful amount of papers on things that don't have any answers, you know, and so that was part of being able to concentrate and do things was yeah. I think about like you go down rabbit holes and you go down rabbit holes on your own, but then now you're in school going down rabbit holes that have been rabbit holes for 2,500 years, and then it's like, you need something to really help out with that. And I was a ADD kid, I took Ritalin when I was younger, right? And, I found that weed kind of coincided with not needing anything like that, like help me concentrate, get rid of the noise, like the rabbit holes, or the other stuff. And so, that really helped me. And, like you said, it's not a low energy thing. So anyhow, I'll get back on track about the business. So Bloodstyle been around for about 6 months. As a clothing design company, I like go places, drop off my card, uh, like, hit up my veteran buddies who have been my number one supporter, which by the way, if you know me and you served with me and you've ordered something, I love you guys. But, that's how it starts, right? Um,
That's right.
so it had been around about 6 months, and by chance, I happened to be going to school with, or not going to school with, but my kids go to school with, a parent who works at a farm called Gold Leaf Gardens in the state of Washington. Love those guys; they're great. Uh, and that's where I met Nate, who is the owner of Gold Leaf Gardens. I mean, I'm pretty sure, but he saw my brand, he saw the shirts, saw my first website, and his actual background is graphic design. And so, and then he obviously was part of the cannabis days when it was pure medical, and probably before it was pure medical, but I can neither confirm nor deny.
Been in the
You know,
game.
but he introduced me to the people in his company, and they had been working together. They've all been together for like 10 years. They had a dream and they grew it together, and it's been awesome for them. And they were looking to take on a brand, and he loved my mission. So he doesn't have like a big veteran presence in his company, but it's a native Hawaiian owned company. They all, they do their, like the big thing now is like living soil and being pesticide free. But they've been doing that since they brought their growing techniques from most of the companies made up of people from like Hawaii, Cambodia. I think that's really about it. Native Hawaiian, Cambodian.
Sure. All
Yeah.
natural.
So I think Japanese too a little bit, but mostly like Asian Pacific Islands, right? And they had grown everything together, and even though like it's me. Nate loved the idea and the mission of giving 10% of your profits back to veteran charities. I think at the time I started with a little bit higher number, but then I learned about business pretty quick, so I had to
Yeah.
tailor it to where I could at least pay for renewing my things, the cost of business. And then, I don't make any real money on it, because most of my profit margin goes into that 10%. So I'm not out here looking like I'm going to get to be a millionaire, although it'd be cool. Like
Yeah.
that's not the idea. The idea is that, I want to do a couple things, which is, make veterans realize, that there is an alternative form of medicine, and it's marijuana, and it works great. And you don't even have to do a lot of it. And the second thing is that, you know, I forgot.
Well, let's go back. You partnered with Nate, and that's for your Canagars, right?
Yeah,
So
for the
talk about those.
cannabis. Yeah, the cannabis brand in the state of Washington. So we went back and forth for some months, came up with product designs and ideas, and he helped me with the design of the packaging itself, and then the story on the back, which tells a little bit about myself. Just says the same things we've already discussed: 13 years of service and 5 deployments. I became a veteran and rediscovered cannabis, and now my mission is to provide a safe, trustworthy, exceptional product, right, for other veterans to try out. So the farm that went to, they're pesticide free, they're all natural, they don't use any chemicals in their processing, they only grow great flower, and they only make great joints, like hand pack. Like these guys hand pack their joints. Like
Let's
they
talk
don't
about
have.
yours, the products that you have with them.
Oh yeah. So sorry, I'll get into that. So they is really like high quality, and when I wanted to do a cannabis brand, I wanted to start small. I wanted to start with a company that, because that was the dream. Like that's why it's blunt style. It's a pipe dream, is because I was like, man, wouldn't it be crazy if this turned into a weed brand? And then it manifested, right? It just started to happen because obviously it's catchy.
Right.
So I was like, so we were talking about what he has and how it works. And what we do is we take, they have different strains with different flavor profiles, and we blend them like whiskey does, right? And so we turn that into the material that goes into the joints. So it started out as we had 5 packs. So this would be the 5 pack. This one right here is the solventless hash rosin blunts. These are 5.7 grammers. Comes out to 3.5 grams total, and in the state of Washington, you're allowed 7 grams, which is way less than Missouri. So, but anyhow, so we have started with just regular blunts with flour, and then regular joints with flour, and then also a 1 gram hash rosin infused blunt, which is on its own, like a straight blunt. Pre rolls with a spiral tip, because the spiral tip reminds me of like an airplane engine. And also, I can't afford to do glass tips or ceramic tips. I'm a very small business, you know what I mean? And I was just starting out, and it was kind of a minimal investment. So we launched with that, and then it actually launched really well, got into a bunch of stores.
What are those called? Like, what's the name of those products that you showed us?
Okay, so this is so I have two different types. So right now all I sell is blunts. I don't have any pre-roll joints. We've got a pre-rolled 5 pack of 0.7 gram blunts, and then a pre-rolled five
And
pack
those are
of
called Tank Fuel?
yeah. So this strain is called Tank Fuel. Um, I also have a couple other strains. I actually do believe I have. Give me just a second.
Yeah, that's what I wanted him to talk about was his names. He got some funny names on some of these strains.
Yeah. All right.
And just so you know, I did write the book Strains for Pains, and it's really a guidebook. It gives you at the beginning, it's got the terpene profiles, and what they help for medicinally. And then the next page, it actually has like the top 19 medicinally reviewed strains I've actually tried out myself.
Yeah.
Um, and then the rest of the book is just open for you to fill in and document what works for you because what works for me may not work for you. Sometimes it happens that way, but we're all individual.
Yeah.
And
Everybody.
figure it out, you can lock it in and you can get more of that or more like it.
Yep. And then so the other two strains we have would be like Charms, right? Which obviously, if you've been in the military, you should know what that is. And then R&R, and each one, the three that we launched. So you have Charms, Tank Fuel, and R&R. So Charms obviously is inspired by the candy. So the flavor profile on that is usually sweet, citrusy, and kind of sativa-y, because you think about Charms as a little bit of sugar to kind of help you get through stuff. That's what sugar
Little
does.
energy boost.
Yeah, like a sativa-ish thing. Like, it's not straight sativa, it's sativa hybrid. And then Tank Fuel, was inspired by, obviously, there's a lot of strains out there. There's a space fuel, there's a jet fuel, but there wasn't a tank fuel. So, I was like, well, if I, want to stick a line on Army, tank fuel is perfect. And, so we make that a gassy, flavor profile from the strains that Gold Leaf grows. And then the last one is R&R, which we all know is rest and relaxation, right? Or rest and recuperation, depending on your preference. I don't care. But R&R was like it was like, oh man, so that's the relaxing indica, great for pain, great for, if you do want to chill on the couch and like veg out for a little while. The tank fuel is like hybrid, so you kind of get either effect depending on who you are. But it's really, the flavor profiles too. R&R tastes like, you know, relaxing, and it helps you relax. And they're quality products with none of the other shit in them. Nobody's spraying anything on them. There's no spray terps. There's no insecticides because, if I'm going to have a product, I'm hampered by my standards. I think in the world of business where I could have maybe gone with a company that was bigger but does things to their weed.
I think
But
it's important, like, for our veterans to know, that there are different quality,
yeah,
standards, and I've seen that both up and down.
yeah,
You gotta pay close attention, like, learn, ask people questions, and get to know the
Yep.
product a little bit. You'll learn the smell and then you learn the flavor profiles, but there's people, like bud tenders that can help you with that if you have any questions.
Yeah, there are a lot of knowledgeable people that work in dispensaries around the country and in farms. And, I am not an expert on anything, but I do know that, my advice oftentimes helps. So that makes me feel good in and of itself. And so we launched with those three flavors. And it's actually, those are the three flavors that have been around for the last 2 years now. So Blood
And
Style started
those are our listeners can only purchase in the state of Washington at the moment, correct?
at the moment, yes. Obviously we get to talk about the future of Blood Style. There'll be things that I'll throw out there that kind of, you know, in some way or form, hopefully we can change things. Yeah, like I see some comments about hemp production stuff, which is where it's kind of like there's a few possible worlds where the business could go into next, right? So, but anyhow, so we've been around for these years, and then also I have other ideas for strain names and other products. So, some of the things like I'm keeping close to my chest, but like right now all I do is sell blunts and pre-roll packages. So I don't have flour, I don't have edibles, I don't have a vape cartridge, but I have great ideas and very marketable ideas on all three, like expanding categories. But in the state of Washington with my product, I don't, I'm, I, I can't think of a word that doesn't sound like I'm, saying something bad. There's nothing bad about it because I love having a small business. I love that I'm able to work closely with the farm and my partner Nate, and come up with ideas and put them out. But also, there's more to be had, and they only do the great flour and they only do the great hash rosin and the joints, but they don't have vape cartridges. It's a small farm, it's a small business. And they don't have the edibles, and they don't have the capacity like some of the bigger producer processors across the country do, right?
So you're looking to expand. That's good.
No, absolutely. No,
And right now, our listeners can find you at your website, which is bluntstyleincorporated.com.
mhm.
Also on Instagram, Blunt Style Inc., and all the socials, Blunt Style Inc.
Yep.
Right
Yeah.
on.
There, yeah, bluntstyleincorporated.com, Blunt Style Inc. And even if you look up Blunt Style Incorporated on Instagram, guess what? You're going to find me anyways
Yep.
because
Right
I
on.
claim, yeah.
Well, before we close this out, if for any of our veteran listeners who may be on the fence about trying cannabis out as an alternative, what would your advice be to them?
Um, Believe in it. Don't be scared. Give yourself all the ways to success. Don't try to overdo it. Um, it's like ease into it. Don't 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 look at it as the cure all, but look at it as you know what could be a major part in your healing journey, both mentally and physically, because it is an effective medicine. And I science is science, and science is controlled by government. Like, I hate to put it like that, but the anecdotal messages from everybody that I've come across that is a veteran that uses cannabis, uh, you know 99 out of 100 have all had positive experiences, and then there's that one that just didn't like it, you know but otherwise I find that it is safer than alcohol. I don't know anybody that has smoked a blunt and killed themselves, but I do know people that have drank a fifth and killed themselves. And I think that it's not just the epidemic, like you hit on 22 a day a lot. You know, it is something that really is effective, because if you think about it when you're high, you kind of giggle, but if you think about it when you're drunk, you take yourself seriously.
It's true. Well, thank you so much, for one, just for sharing your story with us and coming on the podcast to share that. I
I
believe
appreciate, yeah, appreciate the invite, Ryan. This has been wonderful.
I think you're the first Purple Heart recipient I've had on, and um, just wow, thank you for sharing your story, and I'm proud of you for finding your mission, but more importantly for sharing your humor with it, the charms, the R&R, tank fuel, even the merchandise, brings a smile to your face because that's oftentimes sometimes what we need is just a smile, just a quick, "Oh, that's funny." And, um, again, just thank you for sharing. I think that is how we help make a change. We
Yeah,
bring awareness that there is a problem, and then we talk about how we have independently overcome similar problems. And you, myself, and so many others are coming out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, we tried this. This worked for me." And oftentimes people say, "If I was broken, I'm fixed now." So many times people will say right here in the comments, sober 6 years, what do you say? 6 years,
from
3
booze,
days
California.
sober.
I think that's what
Yeah,
they call
and Cali sober, yeah, it really does help, but not just with that, but with getting off the other medication that make us not ourself anymore. For me, I can only speak for myself. It made me not me. Other people said I wasn't even myself. I didn't feel it, and it came close for me a lot of times to the end to being a statistic and so many others. And it's something that helped me. And because of that, I want to help share stories like yours. So, again, thank you for supporting the mission and bringing awareness, especially with the veteran community, and just adding that voice. Because at the end of the day, we are the research, we're the proof that this helps. And we're not couch locked, we're out here on a mission. And
no.
so, check it out. Blunt style. I'm going to close this out, brother. So, hang tight with me. Again, another one. Jeremy's story is a reminder that veterans aren't just fighters or builders or creators or leaders in this next chapter of healing. If this conversation spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it out so more people can hear it. That's how we spread the awareness. That's how we make the change. So head over to 420chief.net to catch more episodes like this one, 420 Chief on YouTube, and you'll find your updates there as well. You can pick up your copy of Strains for Pains if you want to document your journey. That's over there on my website as well. And the nonprofit organization, breakstigmas.com, that myself and Sunnyside of Freedom joined forces not only to raise awareness to plan information in the veteran suicide crisis, but to help bridge that gap between veterans and civilians and bring awareness to mental health awareness overall. So we're about action, not just words. So check us out to learn more over there. And together we can break stigmas. We can help make a change with N22 a day and build a community that really heals. As always, lead with love, lead with change. Happy Red Friday. We wear red every Friday, remembering everyone deployed